Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who action figure review on the Host Productions. In today's review I'm going to be taking a look at one of the latest releases as a part of the B&M exclusive action figure series. In today's review, the First Doctor and Electronic Tardis from the 50th anniversary docudrama An Adventure in Space and Time, featuring a variant of the Tardis with a slightly different shade of blue, as well as rather excitingly the debut of David Bradley as the recast First Doctor. This box set is available to purchase now from B&M stores throughout the UK. The recommended retail price was around £30, however it instantly got reduced when it came out to around 20 quid, which isn't too bad. So before we take a look at the figures themselves, let's look at the packaging. Now, I really hate to start off this review on a really negative note. However, for me, there is no other way that I can describe this packaging other than the worst packaging that I've ever seen on a Character Options Doctor Who 5.5 action figure. And yes, that even includes the holographic 10th Doctor that was exclusive to BBC Shop and the Doctor Who Festival, which came literally in a polythene bag. I have seen Easter eggs that are better wrapped than this, which is mad given that this is a product that was meant to retail for over £30. Rather unusually, following that straight up with a compliment, I absolutely love the design of the box. At the very top we have the Doctor Who logo. The box clearly points out one of the big selling points of this set, being the fact that this is the First Doctor as portrayed by David Bradley as opposed to William Hartnell. As per usual, there is this lovely Gallifreyan trim running around the side of the box. The inner contents is complemented nicely through the use of the TARDIS illustration on the sides. Turning towards the bottom, we have the inclusion of the B&M limited edition sticker. The title of the product is presented on all of the sides, as well as boasting the fact that this is in fact an electronic light and sounds TARDIS as opposed to the usual non-electronic. The sides also then go on to present a number of the features that the TARDIS has, very much like the old days of the flight control TARDISes. As for the lid of the box, this continues to present basically exactly the same information once again, and all of the company information, including the battery details, are hidden away on the bottom. For the back of the packaging, this basically follows exactly the same layout to usual. The Doctor Who logo is once more presented at the top, and some company information is presented at the bottom. And in the very centre we have a little bit of a write-up about the First Doctor, as well as a few behind-the-scenes notes about this set, which I think is a really lovely inclusion. And finally, the cardboard itself is a lovely corrugated design, very much like how it used to be when a part of the Forbidden Planet exclusive series. So far, so good. It looks really nice, and then you realise that the entire product is basically exposed to the elements, and anyone can touch it, anyone can knock it, and there is virtually nothing keeping the figures on the inside safe, meaning that essentially this product is never really in new condition. A little bit of a spoiler for the future of this review, I love both of the figures presented within this set. Both of them are very worthy variants to add to the shelf. However, I absolutely despise the packaging, and despite the Collector's Series labelling there on the box, I don't really see this product as a collector's item, and very much like how I've mentioned within the History of the Dalek set reviews, because of the way that the B&M series is starting to be displayed within the packaging, I'm not really seeing these products as special anymore. I'm seeing them as cheap counterparts or knockoffs in the shadows of what this series originally used to be. Much like the History of the Dalek set reviews, it is only fair that I mentioned the main reason why this has been done is to make the packaging 100% recyclable, which is commendable, but it is treading that fine line between doing so and entirely wrecking the quality and feel of the product overall. And I never thought that I would resort to this as a conclusion, but if this was the way forward in the future, having the figures 100% exposed, I would rather Character Options adopt the approach of other companies and basically having the figure in a 100% sealed cardboard box so you couldn't even see the inner contents, because at least then the product is kept safe. Here we have the First Doctor and his TARDIS out of the box, if that is the correct choice of words to use, given that there wasn't really much keeping these within the box in the first place. So starting off with the main action figure of the set, it is of course the First Doctor. However, this time not portrayed by William Hartnell, but instead David Bradley. So the general sculpt of this figure has been released on a number of occasions in the past. Of course, first debuted as a part of the Forbidden Planet exclusive series. It was released both both single-cardedly and with an electronic Tardis, as well as coming equipped with a giant cape. And then of course most recently it was re-released as a part of the B&M exclusive series a number of years ago in a considerably rare First Doctor and Tardis set, but that one wasn't in fact electronic and is a product that I have previously reviewed. For those of you that have that previous B&M exclusive release, you roughly know what to expect from this figure. It is exactly the same sculpt, except this time with the new David Bradley head, as well as a number of paint application changes. So starting off near the very bottom of the figure, we have the inclusion of the First Doctor's trousers. These are very similar in design to some of the earlier releases as a part of the Forbidden Planet exclusive series, using a lighter grey base with the checkered pattern applied over the top. The sculpt itself has little creases and wrinkles within it to give the impression of material, but in turn this always seems to have a little bit of an effect with the checkered design. As you can see here towards the back, it does end up a little bit messy. The same can also be said here for the lower half of the trouser. With the exception of the head, this is in fact one of the most notable paint application changes across the entirety of this figure, as the First Doctor, who came with the non-electronic Tardis as a part of the B&M series a number of years ago, that had a lighter brown palette which was used to apparently replicate the look from the Web Planet, so this has gone with a much more traditional First Doctor design. Another component of the outfit, which also has a notable absence of brown paint application this time round, is on the First Doctor shoes. Of course, on the previous release it had the lighter brown spat design. This time round we just have a lighter kind of black, which has been used, of course, the same sculpting detail, the laces and the various panels in the shoe. Not particularly too exciting, and certainly not too much to talk about. Moving further up the outfit now, this is basically exactly the same paint application and sculpting design as seen on the previous release. As per usual, the centre of the jacket has a few basic sculpting details on it, including a row of buttons on one side and only 2 buttons on the opposite side. This has of course been sculpted to give the appearance that it is half closed. In the very centre of the jacket we do have further sculpting suggestions of the lapels. Again, these are just a glossy black, and in the very centre we also have the cravat, which does tend to blend into the sculpt. I think that it is again exactly the same colour scheme, so it may have been nice just to have a slight splash of colour on this, just to make it stand out a little bit more and to be able to differentiate it from the jacket. On either side we also have the sculpting detail of the pockets poking ever so slightly above the sculpt, and this does of course feature on either side. Turning the figure around to the back, we have the same jacket details continuing, including various stitches and creases, as well as of course 2 buttons being present in the very centre. The jacket overall does appear to have a rather glossy, waxy finish, and if my memory serves me correct, I do believe this is pretty much the same appearance seen on the previous B&M First Doctor with Tardis. The arms of the jacket continue exactly the same design and colour scheme with a number of creases, and then we also have the suggestion of the buttons surrounding the cuffs. As always with the First Doctor, one of his hands has been sculpted in order to hold the First Doctor's walking stick, which isn't present within this set. But let's face it, the lack of protection with the actual packaging basically being entirely exposed to the elements probably ruins any prospects of having any accessories featured within this set. One of the final components to the outfit is of course the First Doctor's scarf. Now, as seen on the previous First Doctor and Tardis release, this does in fact feature a rather slight sculpting revision, where initially this scarf was actually a part of a much bigger cloak on the Forbidden Planet exclusive release, and that did of course encase pretty much the entirety of the First Doctor's upper half. So instead we just have this rather isolated scarf piece. It is in fact a relatively thick sculpt. It is certainly much thicker compared to the likes of say the Fourth Doctor's scarf, so it's not as flexible, but it does move around ever so slightly. To reflect the fact that this isn't the traditional First Doctor as portrayed by William Hartnell, we do have a slight revision to the colour palette, in fact a very vibrant revision to the colour palette. So instead of the lighter greys and black which has been used on the original release, a rather simple design, we instead have that being swapped out for a vibrant white base, and then above this green and red pattern. This is certainly a lot more vibrant compared to the original release, and to be quite honest, the colour scheme actually reminds me of toothpaste. Rather unfortunately, I think some of the most intricate paint detailing on this scarf actually features towards the back, so the rows are considerably neat, don't particularly blend into each other too much, and then of course towards the lower end of the scarf we also have the addition of the frills. It does appear that the scarf prop used within the docudrama does have a rather precise lined design, so as a result this 5.5 action figure sports a very much simplified variation. I think it works well. And finally, let's take a look at that all-important likeness to David Bradley. It is very exciting having David Bradley as the First Doctor represented within 5.5 action figure form, especially given the fact that An Adventure in Space and Time is pretty bloody good. It's a lovely bit of Doctor Who TV, but also at the same time the fact that he's kind of gone on to be a Big Finish Doctor, which adds for me a personal novelty because, as you know, I absolutely love Big Finish, and this sculpt in particular is absolutely amazing. It is absolutely stunning. I really love the way that they've managed to capture David Bradley's likeness. I think the bone structure overall on the face is incredibly accurate, especially the cheekbones are very pronounced. I love the creases and wrinkles around the mouth. I think that the paint application overall is not too blocky. Eyes, which have that rather precise paint application, the very vibrant eye whites, and that darker blue which has been used for the iris. The eyebrows again aren't too overdone. Perhaps a few of the creases and wrinkles within the face may have been ever so slightly lost throughout the sculpting process, and of course you have the ears towards the side there as well, which have your usual detailing. But yes, overall I am in fact really impressed with this. Something of which I also think is a really nice novelty is the fact that the skin tone looks considerably natural and warm, as opposed to the previous First Doctor released as a part of this series, which made Hartnell look a bit deceased. He was incredibly pale and it looked very spooky indeed. It looked like a haunted First Doctor. So flipping around to the back, we have some lovely paint application detailing once again. The hair has been given a lovely sort of splash of a yellowy white, and again we have some lovely sculpting detail on this, various different creases. Finally, of course, on the top of the First Doctor's head we have the inclusion of the hat. This is very similar to the previous releases, so we have lots of lovely texturing on this to make it look like it has a woolen appearance, and overall has been sculpted in a lovely matte black. And I think that this is a very sharp paint application. It doesn't overlap onto the hair or anything like that. In my opinion, I think that character options have been rather hit and miss when it comes to paint applications and likenesses in recent years. And I think that this figure is a very good example of getting both of those elements right, and they work together really effectively. However, the recently released Regeneration set is kind of the opposite of that, where we have a really good sculpt. However, the paint application really lets it down for the likes of the 14th Doctor. I'm not going to bother going through articulation because, let's face it, this line has been going on for years, so you all know exactly what to expect. So in summary, for the First Doctor, as portrayed by David Bradley, it is a nice variant to add to the shelf, and for those of us that have the previous First Doctor releases, it's a nice complementary figure to kind of go alongside those. I think the paint application changes on the outfit is nice. For the sake of variety, it certainly looks a lot different, especially the scarf and the trousers, and that likeness to David Bradley, it is absolutely superb. Well, would you look at that? It's been about 5 minutes since I last reviewed one of these. It is yet another classic Tardis exterior box, utilising exactly the same sculpt that we've seen many times before. Of course, one of the big selling points for this TARDIS exterior box is of course the utilisation of this massive stacked roof that we've only seen one time prior to this release, and that was the previous First Doctor TARDIS that was exclusive to B&M, and at the time of reviewing that set, I don't think I was really aware of how rare that set was going to be, because it was incredibly sought after. It was released once. I only seen it once actually in shops, and then it was instantly gone again. So I do believe that this set will be no doubt quite a nice thing for people who missed out on that original release. However, for those of us who did manage to collect that second variation of the First Doctor's TARDIS, what does the third variation have to offer? Well, the answer is a very vibrant blue colour scheme. It is incredibly blue. This is meant to be, I do believe, the TARDIS from An Adventure in Space and Time, so I would say it looks a little bit happier compared to the second TARDIS box I reviewed probably about a year ago now. I think it came out around a year ago. That had a rather sort of pale blue design. This this one kind of returns to a slightly more vibrant colour scheme seen within the Forbidden Planet exclusive series, as the original First Doctor TARDIS box had a very Peter Cushing-esque kind of appearance with very vibrant white window panes, as you can see here. And then we also have a few other changes which make this TARDIS look visibly quite different compared to the other releases. Moving down to the very bottom of the TARDIS, we have the base, which is of course the B&M exclusive thinner design. I can actually remember when this was a new and exciting feature, making the TARDIS a little bit more varied. Now this has been released more times than the thicker base seen on the original classic TARDISes. Usually these bases tend to coincide with the rest of the TARDIS being the same colour. This time round we have a rather stark difference, as we have this black base and then the very vibrant darker blue up above. This has been given a lighter kind of bluey wash over the top to make it look worn and battered, and then we have the usual wood grain effect applied. Pull to open signage this time round has been given a very vibrant yellow finish, unlike the vibrant white seen on the previous two First Doctor TARDISes. This has also been given a dirty wash applied over the top to make the signage look like it's seen better days, and the typeface itself I do believe has also seen an ever so slight revision. The actual sticker itself has been rather neatly applied. I certainly think it's the best sticker seen within this TARDIS box, and we also have the blue framework there with the absence of the secondary smaller handle, which again is quite effective. Moving across now to the panel along from this, as per usual, we have the addition of the handle to the TARDIS as well as the key lock just above. Both of these have been given a kind of dirtied bronze finish, which again is different compared to the original release, which had a very vibrant silver handle. This was carried across onto the second edition, and then I do believe that the previous release also had a slightly bronzed lock. This time round it's kind of a darker bronze which has been used. We also have the St. John's ambulance signage, only just here towards the bottom, a very worn design. Again, this is very similar to the second variation, unlike the first version, the Forbidden Planet exclusive, which sported an entire fully intact St. John's ambulance sign. You know the drill by now. As with all classic TARDIS boxes, of course the doors do open to reveal absolutely nothing on the inside of the box, which is how we like it, very much like classic series Doctor Who. There was no backdrop, anything like that, so it just continues the inner darker blue of the box itself with a little bit of the windowing there at the back. As always, there isn't actually anything holding this door in place, so it can move rather loosely, and to pull it closed it's as so. Then the main door is closed through the use of the simple button. Don't get me wrong, I've really enjoyed collecting the classic TARDIS exterior boxes over the years, and in particular I've really enjoyed seeing the line progress, having these many different weird and unusual variants. It's probably in fact one of my favourite parts of my current Doctor Who display back at Hosty HQ, having them all in a line with all the different variants, but at the same time I wouldn't be too annoyed if this was the last ever classic TARDIS exterior box that we see, because all of the ones that could be done have been done, and all the ones that haven't been done wouldn't really work with this sculpt and would need massive modifications in order to be an effective release, with one exception, well maybe two. The pink TARDIS from the Happiness Patrol that I would absolutely snap up within a second, and a 6th Doctor TARDIS, but given the lack of 6th Doctor within the B&M exclusive series, which is very sad indeed, I'd be happy if this was the end. Progressing further up the box now to the TARDIS windows, this features the ever so slightly amended design to include this little lip towards the bottom of the window itself, making the TARDIS appear a little bit more like the 60s design. And again, we have the usual kind of grated frosted effect on these lower panes, and then the rest are just a standard clear plastic. As I mentioned earlier, these have been picked out excellently with that lovely vibrant white frame design. So let's talk about that TARDIS roof, as I suppose it is technically still a new feature. It has only been released twice, and the first release is considerably rare, so for most people it's probably the first time that they're ever actually going to be able to look at this sculpt. So it does of course provide the illusion of this TARDIS being ever so slightly higher compared to the other boxes, so this stacked formation is kind of raised up ever so slightly more. If you do look a little bit more closely, you can quite obviously see the join between the old TARDIS box and the new roof section, in particular on this side column. However, I do think the wash which has been applied over the top does somewhat disguise this ever so slightly. As for the rest of the roof, it is basically what you come to expect from a TARDIS, really. So we have a continuation of that wood-grained effect. I would say it is ever so slightly more prominent compared to the rest of the box, especially with that wash applied. It certainly draws a lot of attention to it, again, in that darker blue sculpted plastic. To accompany the new roof, there was, of course, also a new lantern sculpt made, which does appear to be ever so slightly bigger compared to some of the previous lanterns that we have seen. So we just have these struts at either side holding the lid in place. All of this has been given a lovely blue highlight to coincide with the rest of the box, and then of course the main central light itself has that lovely clear design. As for the police public hall box signage itself, this has been replicated through the use of a sticker, and I must admit I don't think it is particularly too effective. I think it can give a rather cheap appearance overall, especially off to the sides here. You could probably easily peel the sticker off if you wanted to. Of course, this is present on all four of the sides. It kind of returns to a very similar design to the 2005 TARDIS, simply utilising a black base with a very vibrant white text on top, really making it stand out. So let's talk about the actual colour scheme of this TARDIS box, because it is a very unusual combination. I love the way that we've seen the changes to the pull to open sign now being a much more vibrant yellow. Likewise, the police public call box signage now stands out with that black base, very much like the An Adventure in Space and Time TARDIS, but then the accuracy has somewhat stopped from when it comes to the likes of the windows, which had a rather blacked out appearance compared to the An Adventure in Space and Time prop. As for the actual blue which has been used, I think that the one within the docudrama does appear to be rather similar to this, a very glossy, darker blue, certainly a lot more vibrant compared to the original 60s prop, which I must admit, this is my least favourite of the first Doctor TARDISes which have been released. I think that the first one will always be my favourite, but the second one is a worthy addition to the collection. Really lovely, very natural, making the TARDIS prop look like it has seen better days. It's been bashed around the BBC studio. This one's just too glossy for me, I think. I do still like it as a variant, but it is just too glossy. It reminds me of the early days of the B&M exclusive series, where the overall appearance of the box is too plasticky, too glossy, too waxy, which makes the overall piece look a little bit cheap, I can't lie. As with all TARDIS boxes, we have lots of interesting wash which has been used. So flipping around to this side first, we have a combination of this kind of ink dirtied wash in the background and this lighter, more prominent blue, which has been used kind of splodged in between each panel as well as on these side sections here. And then it kind of continues down the entirety of this side. I don't quite know what it's doing. It doesn't particularly look too natural. It's a bit unusual to say the least. But then as we flip around to the front, we kind of have an absence of this wash, and instead we just have a ink kind of design at the top half of each panel that kind of continues onto the pull to open sign as well. But we do kind of have a chalk design which is used, certainly a more subtle whiter wash, which I do quite like. I think that actually works. But then as we turn around to the third side, that white wash seems to completely fade away, and instead we're just left with that black wash kind of in the top half of each panel, which is very odd. And then as we turn around to the back, we kind of have the best bits of all of the washes that we've seen throughout the entirety of the TARDIS box, basically blended together into one big mass of chalk weathering unusualness, which, yeah, it's a bit odd. It's probably the oddest weathering that I've seen on a TARDIS box, and that is really saying something, because I've seen some very odd designs over the years. Flipping the TARDIS upside down does of course reveal one of the main selling points of this TARDIS box, and that is of course for the first time since the Forbidden Planet exclusive series, the electronics actually work. Same design, so we have the on and off switch, and then we have the button which activates the dematerialization and materialization effect. Which this does of course activate a sound chip that we have grown very familiar with over the past few years, including the long materialization effect, the dematerialization effect, and the short materialization effect. And whilst all the materialization stuff is going on, of course, as always, we have the lights going on there as well, flashing a lovely light blue. And in case you've not gathered from that previous bit of footage, it does appear to be very loud this time round. It's alright. It's a bit odd, isn't it? I kind of feel like with a character figure, you can kind of like it or dislike it on the basis of the resemblance to the character. Well, you can't really do that with a Tardis. A Tardis is just a Tardis, and if it's painted weirdly, then it's painted weirdly, but that kind of doesn't evoke hatred or dislike. It kind of just exists. So I think that if you've got the originals, you've probably got the better variations of the prop, but this one will certainly stand out on the shelf. I think the colour scheme's alright, it's vibrant, it stands out. I like some of the details, the likes of the pull to open signage, as well as the worn wash to some extent, and of course it's nice to see that stacked roof once again return, but sadly the lack of blackened out windows and the rather unusual finish which has been given to the overall plastic, giving that waxy cheap appearance, sadly makes the Tardis, in my eyes, not as good as it could look. And of course it is nice the electronics are back. That's an added bonus, especially given the fact that this set was reduced basically from the off, meaning that we basically got an electronic Tardis for the same price as a non-electronic one, which, you know, you can't argue with that, can you? So in summary, what do I think of the First Doctor and electronic Tardis? Well, starting off with the packaging, as I mentioned earlier, it is the worst packaging that I've ever seen on a Character Options action figure. Absolutely despise it, and I wish it was so much better. As for the actual contents itself, once you've looked beyond the horror, that is that. It's an alright set. I think it's one of those sets that if you've missed out on the previous releases, then you're probably going to like it more than those who have been collecting each individual variant. Of course, David Bradley is a lovely addition to the collection. By far the highlight of the set, a stunning likeness with excellent paint application and some nice tweaks to the costume as well. But at the end of the day, the TARDIS is the TARDIS, and my personal preference is the original ones are a lot better compared to this one, and I just think it does look a little bit too plasticky for my liking, but it is still an alright variant. I think that you can't really go too far wrong with the TARDIS. This one just doesn't tick all the boxes for me. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Productions for regular Doctor Who content. Have a nice day, I shall see you all next time.